They told you you were too sensitive, but sensitivity was never your weakness. It was your summons. You were never meant or never just feeling emotions. You were decoding energies. That ache in your chest, that wasn't anxiety. That was your assignment calling. For most empaths, the calling begins as confusion. You feel everything. People's moods become weather systems that shift your own. You walk into rooms and can sense what happened there, the tension, the joy, the secrets. And for years, you tried to numb it. You tried to blend in, but the calling won't let you. It starts to whisper through exhaustion, sickness, broken boundaries. Because an empath's body speaks louder than their mouth when they're off mission. You'll feel drained where your spirit doesn't belong, and you'll feel peace in places your purpose can breathe. You weren't chosen to fix everyone. You were chosen to feel what others ignore. That's how God trains an empath through the ache of awareness. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, and every loss carved your sensitivity into precision. Empaths aren't weak, they are divine instruments of discernment. You hear what's not said. You sense who's pretending. You can tell when love is manipulation dressed in softness. That's not paranoia. That's perception that has evolved. The empath's initiation is isolation because until you learn to separate your emotions from others, from their energy, you'll drown in their storms. You'll mistake their pain for your own. You'll absorb what's not yours to carry. That's why divine separation happens, not to punish you, but to purify your sensitivity. So when you return to the world, you can discern without drowning. You can heal without being used. You can love without losing yourself. Stillness is an empath's shield. It's how you hear the difference between intuition and interference. Stillness recalibrates your frequency to truth. That's why chaos chases you. It's trying to keep you too noisy to hear yourself. When you slow down, you start to remember who you are. You start recognizing manipulation as energy theft. You realize some people only come to feed on your peace. But when you stop rushing to rescue, you start rising into revelation. Empaths are truth tellers wrapped in tenderness. You are here to remind humanity that love is intelligence, not ignorance, that compassion is not compliance. You are the feelers of the unseen, the translators of the divine. You don't just heal people, you restore humanity's conscious. And that's why your calling feels heavy, because you're carrying more than emotion. You're carrying light. Your evolution as an empath is not about feeling less, it's about feeling wisely. It's learning that your empathy was never meant to be spent on everyone, only invested where it multiplies healing. Boundaries are not walls, they are gates that protect your sacred frequency. Once you master that balance, you become unstoppable. You turn discernment into direction, compassion into clarity, sensitivity into strength. If you are hearing this, your calling is not coming, it's here. You were built to sense what the world denies. You were born to feel what others numb. You are the emotional compass of creation, the heart that keeps humanity humane. And when it feels too heavy, remember, the empath's pain is the divine's way of saying, I can trust you with the heart of the world. But emotion is the language of truth before words learn to live. An empath's awakening doesn't come with lightning, it comes with weight. You start feeling the temperature of a room shift before anyone speaks. You sense sorrow in smiles. You know when someone's I'm fine means I'm falling. At first, you think something's wrong with you. You overanalyze, you isolate, you self doubt. But that confusion is the cocoon before clarity. Your body becomes the barometer. Anxiety becomes revelation misinterpreted. You don't yet realize the nervous system of an empath is built as a divine radar. You pick up on what others pretend not to see. When you stop resisting what you feel, you stop drowning in it. Because awakening isn't about escaping sensitivity, it's about learning how to translate it. Compassion is not a weakness, it's a covenant. When the divine marks an empath, it signs your heart into service. You are entrusted to feel what humanity hides. But here's the truth: compassion without boundaries become captivity. Many empaths confuse responsibility with rescue. You start absorbing pain that was never your assignment. The covenant of compassion is balance: to feel deeply without losing yourself completely, to love enough to lift, but wise enough to walk away. Every betrayal you endured was part of your initiation. It taught you how to discern love from attachment, need from connection. You are not meant to carry everyone's chaos, only to interpret it. And interpretation brings healing. So the next time someone says you care too much, understand they're confessing they've forgotten how to care at all. Every empath faces the wilderness. It's where your sensitivity gets tested for strength. You'll be misunderstood, ghosted, drained, and even doubted. You'll cry over things others laugh at, and laugh about truths others find too heavy. The solitude isn't punishment, it's purification. It's how the divine filters out voices that distort your discernment. In isolation, you learn the difference between loneliness and alignment. Loneliness cries, I'm empty. Alignment whispers, I'm being filled. You begin to realize peace is louder than applause. And when you stop chasing noise, clarity becomes your companion. So when everyone walks out, don't panic. That's the sound of your energy resetting. That's the sound of the sacred clearing the stage for your next elevation. Stillness is not silence, it is strategy. It's how an empath reclaims their authority. You can't hear divine direction in chaos. Stillness helps you separate your feelings from other people's projections. When you slow down, you start noticing who drains you and who restores you. You see manipulation and concern and guilt inside love, and motives hiding beneath helping you. The world moves fast so you won't feel, but an empath's power is in presence. Every deep breath becomes armor. Every pause becomes protection. Stillness trains you to respond, not to react. Because when you stop reacting, you start ruling your energy. And that's when spiritual parasites lose access. Empaths are the translators of divine emotion. You interpret what heaven feels about earth. That's why people confide in you without knowing why. That's why strangers cry in your presence. They're not responding to you, they're responding to what flows through you. Your assignment isn't to heal everyone, it's to awaken humanity's conscience. You're a walking reminder that love still exists in a world that worships numbness. That's why darkness targets you, because when you speak truth softly, systems start shaking loudly. You don't fight with force, you fight with feeling. And feeling is the weapon of the awakened. You were not placed here to blend in. You were placed here to break patterns with empathy sharp enough to cut through deception. True mastery is when your empathy matures into embodiment. You no longer absorb, you observe. You no longer chase peace, you become it. Mastery looks like peace in chaos, clarity in confusion, compassion without compliance. It's loving without losing your identity. It's walking into dark rooms and remaining light. Every empath reaches this stage when they stop apologizing for their sensitivity and start honoring it as strategy. You are not broken. You are finely tuned. You are not too much. You are exactly calibrated. The world needs that heart, but protect it like sacred ground. Because when the empath remembers who they are, the world remembers how to feel again. You didn't choose to feel, you were chosen because you could. And that makes you rare. The world needs your empathy, but you must first give it to yourself. So when it feels like a burden, remember, even Jesus wept. The divine doesn't avoid emotion, it anoints it. And you are that anointed feeler, here to remind creation that healing begins with honesty. They told you to toughen up. They stop being so emotional. But no one told you that your emotions were messages. That what overwhelms others was sent to train you. So when you're an empath, your awakening doesn't start with light, it starts with weight. The weight of sensing too much, the weight of crying for reasons you can't explain, the weight of carrying emotions that don't even belong to you. You walk into rooms and something in your body starts speaking. You don't hear words, you feel them, right? A tightening in the gut, a sudden sadness. That's not paranoia. That's spiritual intelligence operating through sensation. Before you understand it, it feels like torment. You question if something's wrong with you because no one around you feels as deeply as you do. You overthink every emotion. And because you don't have language for your sensitivity, you turn it into shame. But awakening begins the moment you realize you're not feeling too much, you're feeling accurately. You've just never been taught how to interpret what you feel. The empath's nervous system is like a spiritual radar, radio tower. You're wired to pick up frequencies that others tune out. And every ache you mislabeled as anxiety is actually your intuition alerting you to energy out of alignment. It's alerting you to energy out of alignment. That's why certain people exhaust you, because your body knows what your mind hasn't yet accepted. That's why some environments make you sick, because your energy is allergic to dishonesty. The awakening stage is messy. You're decoding feelings faster than you can explain them. You cry over injustice, over cruelty, over silence that feels too loud. And while others mock your sensitivity, heaven calls it assignment awareness. You were built to feel what others deny, so you can translate it into healing. But before you can heal others, you must stop hiding from yourself. That's where the awakening begins. When you stop trying to escape your sensitivity and start understanding that it's sacred. Your emotions are not interruptions to your purpose, they're instructions for it. When you were chosen as an empath, heaven didn't hand you a title, it handed you a contract, a sacred covenant of compassion. It's not written in words, it's written in your heart. That's why betrayal cuts you deeper than most, because you love with the same intensity you were created to heal with. But compassion is not weakness. It's the highest frequency of intelligence. It's the language of the divine translated through human touch. See, the world teaches love as transaction. Give to it, help to be liked, perform to be accepted. But an empath's love is unconditional. You don't give to get. You give because your spirit recognizes pain. You see someone hurting and your soul instinctively whispers, I remember that wound. That's the empath's gift. You don't just sympathize, you synchronize. You meet people in their hidden ache. You can feel the child inside the adult who's pretending not to be broken. You sense the sadness behind the sarcasm, the fatigue behind the smile. But here's the sacred truth. If you're not careful, your compassion will become captivity. Because empaths often confuse responsibility with rescue. We think feeling the pain means we're meant to fix it. And that's where the contract gets violated, not by others, but by ourselves. The divine never asked you to save everyone. It asked you to sense, to guide, to witness, and not to absorb. When you carry what's not yours, you block what's meant for them, their lesson, their growth, their accountability. There's a difference between compassion and codependency. Compassion says, I see you and I believe you can heal. Codependency says, I'll heal for you so you don't have to. The empath's covenant is about trust. Trusting that feeling deeply doesn't mean fixing everything. Trusting that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away with peace instead of staying with pain. And that takes wisdom, because your empathy will attract people who crave your comfort but resist your correction. They'll love your light but resent your boundaries. They'll call you selfish when you finally say, I'm tired. But that's when your compassion graduates into discernment. You start realizing that not everyone who cries deserves your energy. Not every apology deserves your reentry, and not every connection deserves continuation. Compassion becomes covenant when it's guided by clarity. You can love someone from afar. You can forgive without reopening the door. You can care without caring. When you learn that balance, your gift becomes sustainable. You start pouring from overflow, not depletion. You move from empathy as reaction to compassion as revelation. So the next time someone says, you care too much, understand this. You were born to care deeply in a world that forgot how. But now you'll care wisely because empathy without boundaries isn't divine, it's dangerous. This covenant is your reminder. You're not here to save the world, you're here to awaken it. Every empath eventually reaches this wilderness, that space between who you were and who you're becoming. And it's not punishment, it's preparation. It's where God removes the noise, the chaos, and the attachments so you can finally hear your own frequency clearly. See, the empath's testing ground isn't a desert of nothingness, it's a classroom of discernment. You'll walk through seasons where your phone stops ringing, your friends drift away, and every place that once felt familiar suddenly feels foreign. And at first it hurts because your heart still measures connection by proximity. You think isolation means rejection, but it's actually divine redirection. The empath sensitivity can't mature surrounded by distortion. You can't learn who you are when you are constantly absorbing who everyone else is. So heaven separates you, not to silence you, but to sharpen you. This is the stage where you learn to stop chasing company and start cherishing clarity. You begin to notice how your energy shifts when you're alone, how peace becomes your teacher, how your intuition gets louder in stillness. But here's the truth no one tells you: isolation exposes addiction, not to substances, but to people, the need for validation, and what is distracting you. You realize how many of your relationships was built on your ability to help, not for you to be held. You realize how often you ignored your own exhaustion to keep others comfortable. That's when the testing begins, because the wilderness will ask you, can you still love when no one is clapping for you? Can you still give when no one notices? Can you still believe in your purpose when no one affirms it? If you can say yes, that's when your sensitivity turns to strength, because isolation is the forge that turns empathy into mastery. You stop reacting to everything that moves. You start observing. You stop begging for understanding. You start standing in truth even if it's misunderstood. Psychologically, isolation resets the nervous system. It teaches you how to self regulate without external validation. Spiritually, it's the divine saying, you've been tuned to too many voices, so let's recalibrate you to mine. And slowly the ache becomes alignment. You wake up one day and realize you're not lonely anymore. You're just clear. The noise has left, and in its absence, you can finally feel the difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness says, I'm missing someone. Solitude says, I've found myself. So if you're in that quiet season right now, the season where nothing makes sense and everyone seems far, understand this: you're not being abandoned, you're being anointed. Every chosen empath must learn to be alone before they can be trusted to lead. Because how can you guide others through emotional storms if you never sat with your own? The testing ground doesn't come to destroy you, it comes to detox you, to teach you that your peace is not a place, it's a person. And that person is you. By the time you emerge, you won't just hear energy, you'll command it. You won't just feel truth, you'll embody it. So when the silence feels heavy, remember this: you're not being emptied, you're being refined. Stillness is not silence, it's strategy. It's how the empath reclaims their power in a world addicted to noise. See, noise is not just sound, it's simulation, it's stimulation. Constant messages, constant conversation, constant emotional downloads. Every vibration of chaos demands your attention because energy knows when a sensitive soul is listening. But here's what most empaths never learn: You don't have to attend every energetic conversation your spirit can hear. You don't have to interpret every feeling, fix every problem, or respond to every cry. Discernment begins where reaction ends. Stillness is not withdrawal, it's wisdom. It's you saying, before I absorb this, let me ask if it's mine. Because not every emotion in your body belongs to you. Sometimes it's an echo, a frequency your spirit picked up from the crowd. When you move too fast, you confuse noise for need. You start rescuing everyone and losing yourself. But when you slow down, the truth separates itself from the static. Stillness is your spiritual filtration system. It cleanses what's been clinging to you. It teaches your body to return to peace after being drenched in chaos. And peace, my friend, is not passive, it's protective. Psychologically, stillness activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's natural rest and repair mode. Spiritually, it activates the divine GPS within you, the voice that says, this is safe or this is not for you. When you practice stillness, you stop being an emotional sponge and start being a sacred sensor. You can walk through a storm and stay dry inside. You can listen to someone's pain without drowning in it, and you can love without leaking. Here's what stillness teaches the empath. Boundaries are not walls, they're gates. Walls keep love out. Gates discerns who gets in. And every gatekeeper must learn when to open and when to close. And you don't know everyone access to your energy. Access is earned through alignment and not pity. And silence is one of your greatest discernment tools. When you go quiet, you'll learn who respects your rest and who resents your recovery. You'll see who values your peace and who only values your presence when it benefits them. Stillness reveals what busyness hides. It shows you the truth about relationships, about motives, about energy exchange. It restores your intuition to its original settings. You begin to realize that stillness doesn't make you passive, it makes you precise. You no longer waste emotional energy proving what your spirit already knows. You stop explaining your boundaries to people committed to misunderstanding them. You learn that your silence speaks volumes. And when you finally understand that, you become untouchable because the empath who masters stillness can't be manipulated. Chaos can recruit you when peace is can't recruit you when peace is in your home. Stillness is where the empath transforms from responder to ruler, from absorber to architect, from emotional to enlightened. You stop reacting to energy and start commanding it. You realize the most powerful thing you can say is often nothing at all. Because in the quiet, your frequency speaks to you, and the wrong energies can't stand the sound of peace. So practice it, protect it, prioritize it, because every time you choose stillness over stimulation, you strengthen your discernment, expand your clarity, and remind your spirit. I am not the chaos I feel, I am the calm that witnesses it. You were never meant to be ordinary. You were built as a bridge between worlds, the seen and the felt, the spoken and the silent. Empaths are translators of divine emotion. You interpret what heaven feels about earth. That's why people confide in you without knowing why. That's why strangers feel safe enough to cry in your presence. They're not responding to your words, they're responding to the frequency of truth moving through you. Your sensitivity is not random, it's sacred instrumentation. The divine uses your nervous system as a messenger line. That flutter in your chest, that chill on your arms, that sudden pull toward or away from someone, it's communication. The unseen world speaks through sensation long before it ever reaches language. But here's what most empaths don't realize: every translator must learn neutrality because the message loses power when the messenger adds projection. You can't accurately deliver divine emotion if your own wounds are speaking louder than your wisdom. So the assignment demands purification. Every heartbreak, every disappointment, every loss that brought you to tears, those were lessons in emotional translation. They taught you tone, timing, and truth. They refined your compassion into discernment so you could feel without filtering it through fear. Spiritually, your role is sacred. You are the emotional conscious of humanity. You remind a numb world that love is still intelligence. That feeling is not weakness, but information from the soul. You are the ones who carry light into dark spaces, not to expose people, but to illuminate possibilities they've forgotten. And yes, darkness will test you for that, because when you speak truth softly, systems start shaking loudly. Every empath who steps into their assignment attracts resistance. The more light you release, the more shadows react. That's why protection is part of your purpose. Boundaries are not selfish, they're sacred geometry around your mission. If you leak energy everywhere, your message loses clarity. Guarding your peace keeps your translation pure. Psychologically, this is emotional regulation. Spiritually, it's priesthood. You are the emotional priest, that one who brings humanity's pain before the altar of understanding. You feel it, interpret it, and hand it back as healing. But remember this: your empathy is not meant to end in exhaustion, it's meant to evolve into expression. Write what you feel, speak what you sense, move energy through art, prayer, movement, and honesty. Because every time you express, you release. Every time you release, you realign. Your gift is not only to truth, to feel it, but to translate it into something the world can use, into words, music, into care, activism, parenting, teaching, and even presence. Whatever form it takes, that's your ministry. So when you feel the ache rise in you again, don't curse it. Ask it. What are you trying to tell me? Because behind every wave of emotion is revelation in disguise. You were never cursed with sensitivity. You were commissioned with sensitivity. Your emotions are encrypted instructions. Translate them. That's your sacred work. Mastery is when you once felt what you've once felt becomes what you are. When empathy stops becoming something that happens to you and becomes something that flows through you deliberately, wisely, and unapologetically. The earth, the early empath absorbs, the awakened empath observes, and the master empath embodies. You've walked through confusion, compassion, isolation, and stillness. You've learned that love without boundary drains you, that silence is your sanctuary, that peace is your natural language. Now, every lesson begins to integrate. Mastery isn't about feeling less, it's about feeling on purpose. And you'll start noticing how energy moves before words do. And instead of reacting, you align. Instead of rescuing, you radiate. So your nervous system, once overrun by pain of others, becomes a temple of discernment. And you can sense darkness without fearing it. And you can witness pain without absorbing it. You can love people who are broken without breaking with them. Now, psychologically, mastery is emotional regulation. Spiritually, it's sovereignty. It's knowing that you have agency over your attention, your time, and your tenderness. You are no longer the empath who leaks energy. You are the empath who channels it. You become intentional with your sensitivity. You decide what deserves your empathy and what no longer qualifies for it. Because compassion without discernment becomes self betrayal. And you've done too much inner work to keep betraying your own spirit. The master empath walks in quiet authority. You don't announce your insight anymore because you now embody it. You don't chase understanding, you become understanding. Your presence alone recalibrates rooms. Your peace becomes a sermon. Your energy becomes evidence. People feel safe around you because your aura says, I will not harm, but I will not hide. That's what embodied empathy looks like: an open heart, but anchored boundaries and grounded power. It's no longer about proving your love, it's about living it consistently, consciously, without depletion. You give because giving is your nature, not your need. You forgive without forgetting the lesson. You release without resentment. You speak truth without trembling. And here's the quiet secret: mastery doesn't make life easier, it makes you steadier. The storms still come, but now you recognize yourself as the I within them. You don't beg for peace, you are peace. The empath who embodies their gift becomes a mirror of divine order. Every breath, every boundary, every act of compassion turns into alignment between heaven and earth. You are no longer just sensing light, you're radiating it. Now, that's what the entire calling was about: to train your sensitivity into strength, to turn emotion into wisdom, and to prove that empathy, when mastered, is the most powerful form of leadership. So when you walk out into the world from here, walk differently, not as the one who feels everything, but as the one who channels everything towards truth. You've mastered the art of being human and holy at the same time. And that balance, that embodiment, is what heals the world. Now, this is your map. I need for you to use it, guard it, and live it. And when the world grows cold again, let your warmth remind it what humanity feels like. Thank you for visiting my channel. Stay covered, stay conscious, stay undefeated, and I will see you on the next one.